Welcome to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek. The Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek delivers a look into the world of manufacturing with a focus on stories and trends that lead to better solutions. Our guests share tips and outcomes that will help you improve your productivity. I'm your host, Dave McKenna from Grantek. I'm the practice leader of our Smart Packaging group, which focuses on label verification, confirming the right package is in the right box, as well as controlling printers, code daters, and other marking devices. Today, I'm joined by Ian Wilson of Grantek. Ian is the safety and logistics practice lead at Grantek, so he's kind of a peer similar to my role, but in the safety and logistics world. Ian is an experienced project manager with a demonstrated history of working in the industrial automation industry, skilled in process control, control system design, SCADA, engineering, and process automation. Strong program and project management professional with a TUV focus in machine safety. So Ian leads our team of safety professionals who serve Grantek's clients across North America. Ian, thank you for joining me on the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.
Thanks, David. I'm excited to be here and look forward to talking about Industry 4.0 with you.
So what before we get into kind of more questions, I'd like to ask each of the guests a little bit of background, hear their story, their career, how they got where they are, why they're still there. You're a fellow Ian is a fellow long time Grantek employee. Ian, you have how many years now?
Around 17 years.
17 years, yeah. So Ian's got some heavy tenure. I've known him. I have 21 years, so we've both been kicking around the same office. We're physically, geographically in the same office, so we've known each other a long time, been working in the same area a long time. So yeah, tell our guests, our listeners, your career. How did you get into manufacturing? How did you get into automation? How did it start? What was your progression and to get you to where you are today?
Thanks, David. I started off as a little kid, always interested in taking things apart. I was always interested in robotics. I had a little robotic arm when I was a little kid. Was always an interest taking things apart.
Lego? Was that mine? Because Mindstorm was a thing then, or maybe no.
I had a Armatron.
Armatron, okay.
Yes, which was a 2-joystick robotic arm, 6-axis robotic arm.
Oh wow!
And got that for Christmas one year and was excited and always interested in automation. And then progressed through my career in automotive, and then in 2000.
So you did what education background did you do?
So I did electromechanical engineering.
Okay.
So it was a program out of Sheridan College that was focusing on robotics and automation. And then from there, went into automation and then worked for a robotic weld cell company for a while, and then joined Grantek and worked through Grantek and got interested in machine safety and machine safeguarding, and been doing it for about 15, 16 years now. So
awesome. And just Ian has been more than a bit of an inspiration for me, to be honest. So I moved into my current role, or something that was close enough to it, before I got the title, running our Smart Packaging group maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But some of the model for this was Ian's stuff, because Ian is a true expert in safety and runs large programs of many projects being completed for clients to completely solve their safety issue. And true story, Ian, really impressed with the amount of stuff that you've done. And so I've tried to copy that where we can come into packaging and do what you do in safety, where it's, hey, we'll solve your safety issue for you across your entire company, all your facilities. We know what we're doing. Here's the kind of things you need to go and do. Here's the steps for us to work through all this together, and then bang, it's kind of solved. And that's sort of the model I've tried to copy, and Ian has been very successful doing that in safety. For how long? How long have you been doing this safety dance?
I've been doing safety dance for 10 or 15 years or so.
15 years, yeah. 15 years safety. 15 years of mega safety programs means you know really what you're doing.
Lots of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I mean, if it was easy, there wouldn't be any. If it was easy, people could just do it themselves, in-house kind of thing. But no, they can't. And well, you can, but there's reasons why not to, and it's harder. So, perfect. So before we get into the more serious side, try to ask. We do like to talk about shiny new technology here. So we try to see a good riddle. Let's see what riddle the AI came up with, and let's see how you can battle wits against the computer. This is not quite Gary Kasper. We couldn't get Gary Kasparov and Deep Blue or whatever IBM Sherlock Holmes is AI Watson is called these days. I don't know, but we got Ian and we got the riddle generator. So I'm the part of a bird that's not in the sky. I can swim in the ocean and remain dry. What am I?
Hmm.
That's a really good one, actually. I'm impressed with the computer.
Uh, Penguin? I don't
No,
know.
no, the bird's shadow.
Shadow.
Shadow is not in the sky.
Oh,
I don't
there
know it does swim in the ocean. Does it swim in the ocean or does it swim on the ocean? Because the shadow stays on the
on the
top.
ocean. Yeah,
Shadow is on the top. It
it'd be
does
more
stay dry.
on the ocean versus in the
I-
ocean.
Is
Yeah.
the shadow part of the bird? I don't know. The AI it's a very clever AI, but
Hmm.
technically inaccurate. I gotta look up better. I'll have to ask our podcast team if these are really if it is it making these up or is it just finding them? Because that's cheating if it just finds them. But anyways, that one was pretty good. So
Hmm.
so first getting into automation, getting into industry. What is Industry 4.0 to you? It gets thrown around the word. It's used for everything from goggles, smart eyewear, 3D printing, data stuff. What is Ian Wilson's understanding and definition of Industry 4.0?
Um, Really the revolution of new technology and breaking into a new era. As someone who grew up in the internet boom,
Mm,
progressing through the different technologies. It's interesting how they're branding it as a Industry 4.0, but I think it's always evolution of technology. Be interesting to see what the Industry 30.0 is.
yeah, I mean, there's no so far so good. Things seem to keep evolving. That's an interesting point. Growing up, comparing it to you get these booms. I think this is a genuine boom in manufacturing. I think this isn't just spin. There is real money being spent by people. There are new companies like Internet Boom, right? I mean, Ian and I are old enough that we remember back in the days when you had to sit on your porch and with a shotgun and go to the bank
It's
piece of
interesting though.
with a piece of paper and all that stuff. But it is a real boom. There is money being spent by manufacturing companies to invest in their by some, and I would say many, and they're spending stuff on new things that was never spent before. There are a lot of new entrants. There's a lot of new vendors coming in, or existing vendors are adding to their offering in ways that we kind of haven't seen before. So it is real. A funny question, like how do these? I wonder how these names for a boom start. Like who? This I think Industry 4.0, a lot of it was government. Like I think German government had a big piece of this. But how does it go from just did a bunch of people sit around a table and say, "Hey, we're gonna make a cool name to inspire this boom. Let's go with." I'd have to look up the origin of that. I'm completely
It originated from the baby boomers,
perhaps the wah,
right?
wah.
You know,
Ian and I warning Ian and I have a both we're both fathers, so this could be a completely awful interview. You have been warned. So, but somebody sat around a conference room and said, "Let's call it 4.0. That's going to catch on. Then people will get excited, spend money, revolutionize manufacturing." So to you, it's a new application of technology, which I think has always been happening to some degree, way, shape, or form, but definitely uptick in spend at companies, uptick in trying new, riskier things, I think. And I mean, have you seen that? Are you seeing people experiment in previous, and are they doing it in safety? So here's the question. You're the safety expert, the safety man. Has safety changed in the last 4 or 5 years? Is it being done with different technology in a new and different way? Or is there any, Industry 4.0 safety? What's anything different? What's different? New players in it somehow, people approaching it differently, or no, safety's kind of
Absolutely.
less changed, less affected. What do you see?
No, great question. And they're always coming up with new technology and safety, whether it's new types of sensing devices, things to drive things more cost efficient.
Hmm.
Um, what the big change is really in the workforce, and safety has to catch up to the workforce because the workforce is
So what do
changing.
you mean by that? How is the workforce changing? How does that affect safety?
So it's interesting where we would walk into a plant and it would be a piece of equipment that was built, 40 years ago. And the operators have been operating that equipment for 20, 30 years. They're used to that type of equipment. They know what it sounds like, they know what it looks like,
Hmm.
they know how to fix it, and they're used to the hazards. But then you get a changing workforce.
Hmm.
The younger workforce now is not attentive. They're distracted with Industry 4.0. All these AI tools, the Apple phones and Instagrams and all the rest of that kind of stuff, and they're very distracted. So they're not paying attention to the job and the hazards. So companies are having to come up with creative ways to um, guard these hazards from these employees that are distracted.
Hmm. Is that distraction? Again, this is welcome to the Grumpy Old Man podcast, 2024 edition. Genuine, no question. I've seen and heard workforce. There's big workforce turnover. Everyone's seeing that. Baby boomers, big demographic cohort retiring. A lot of knowledge and experience in there. A lot of, if you're used to the equipment, you've been running it for 20, or you were there when it was installed, then you know this thing, or you've picked up institutional knowledge on how it operated, what the hazards are. Definitely can see with a big workforce turnover, especially if there's a bunch of turnover at once. I'd be curious to hear from manufacturers if they're hit with, yeah, we didn't just lose 1 or 2 people, we lost like everyone who knows how this thing works. So we're kind of starting from scratch here. That's painful. I can see how that would create genuine safety issues. I wonder about the level of distraction on plant floor because I know operators and people are there's so many more source potential. There are more potential sources of distraction than ever before. There's also more being asked of an operator, I think, than ever before. They probably weren't doing, you go back 40 years, was everybody going to a computer to enter real time quality information, or you could just kind of catch up on that paperwork whenever you needed to kind of piece and the level of tracking. So I think there's way more being asked, which is a form of distraction, but I can't speak to how many distractions people shouldn't have while they're at work, but definitely see the turnover piece. And I've the other what's the other one I've heard? Sites have massive trouble hiring. Nobody wants to work. I don't know if that's changed or not. That was maybe more a year or
Post,
two ago. And drug test is like just hard to get people, so
yeah,
hard to replace.
post COVID, there was a lot of changes in the workforce.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of changes in the workforce. The other
So
thing is a
so
lot of companies.
genuinely, people are not. People are. I'd be curious about the other one. If you were born 40 years ago or 60 years, if you were born 60 or 80 years ago, you had a more dangerous, air quotes, dangerous upbringing, right? You didn't have helmets on. You didn't grow up in a safer world.
Yep.
Some of that was just lead paint. Lead paint's not a good thing. We're not endorsing lead paint on this podcast, but generally there were fewer guardrails on things, no bike helmets, that kind of stuff. And I wear a bike helmet. My kids wear a bike helmet, but none of that stuff was there. The world wasn't a safety. The design was safety. I mean, open. We're not. This is our philosophy moment, I guess, for a second. But open question on if you have a world with that's more dangerous and you grow up in it, and then versus someone who grows up with all the safety and well, those two people aren't going to work the same on the same equipment with the same hazards, right? And I think that's an interesting comment as well. Okay, so workforce, the machines in the workforce, big workforce change. whole bunch of reasons why for that. Probably a bunch we haven't thought of. And so safety has to, like, is everyone really playing catch up on here, or like, what
It's
are you seeing?
yeah, a lot of people are playing catch up on equipment where some of this equipment that was 20, 30 years old, just you can't replace it.
Yeah.
It's not cost effective, or there isn't replacements out there. The other thing is the big thing that's driving safety is trying to run lean, continuing to lean manufacturing, cost efficiency. So how do you guard the equipment with the change of workforce, but yet maintain as efficient as possible?
So I can't just put fencing all over everything and make 16 bolts to take it off, because people still have to get in there and do jams and resolve a jam in a timely manner and do changeover and potentially access machine parts and so on. But I also need to guard my workforce. So those are kind of trade-offs, right? I mean, ultimately, well, correct me, maybe this is wrong. Do I have to choose between safety and running my equipment, or is there ways to do both? Can I make it safer and make it reasonable to run it? And then how do I do that? If
Exactly.
you can.
No, that's exactly the bread and butter of what we do is how we make it safe and allow them to have access to areas to run the equipment as as lean as possible, and relying on the minor servicing exception and ensuring that we're not performing lockout tagout and bringing equipment to a safe state when entering into certain parts of the equipment.
So maybe for some of our guests who don't know, what's the minor service exemption, and and briefly what's lockout tagout?
So OSHA, the governing body, requires manufacturers to provide a safe work environment. That's their steadfast rule. They say you need to provide a safe work environment. How you do that, you can rely on the standards and requirements. There's policies, procedures you can follow. They say if you need to enter any hazardous areas, you need to lock out the equipment. So that's de-energizing all hazardous energy and putting a lock on it. Now, that wasn't really a good rule for lead manufacturers that need to get in and clear jams on a regular basis.
Right.
So then they came up with a minor servicing exception. If it's a routine, repetitive, integral part of the machine and a maintenance task, a minor maintenance task, then you can rely on an exception, provided you perform a risk assessment, identify all the hazards, and put a plan in place to reduce those hazards when the operator interacts with the equipment.
Okay.
So that's the bread and butter of what we do with different types of manufacturers, and trying to make sure they're providing safe work environment at the same time drive efficiency in their equipment.
So I got to shut everything off, put a lock on it, put a lock in 6 places probably, because there's 6 different sources of energy. But I can get around that legally and still follow safety if it's minor work, if it's repetitive type work, and if there's safeguards in place to make sure that things aren't going to restart, open a guard door, clear my jam, and cuts the safety circuit. Okay. And so you're doing these assessments where you, with your expert knowledge and your team's expert knowledge, figure out what can we do, how can we apply that exemption, or where not, and there's rules and specs. How has that, kind of tying this back to new technology, how has that changed in the last, I don't know, 5 years and yeah, let's just stick with one question at a time, Dave.
Absolutely. So new technology, new safety devices, better application.
So what's your favorite new safety device? Like, what's a good one?
There's different types of scanners that are new. There's different types of switches.
Like light curtain,
light curtain. There's different types of light curtains, but the tough one is when you need to lock a door, and they're always coming up with new types of door locks. And
really,
absolutely,
because I've seen doors.
Yeah,
I've seen machine doors. I mean, you close the door, there's some metal. This is the Dave Ignorance show on display for everyone. You close the door, there's some metal thingy that pushes into another metal thingy, trips a switch, you know the door's closed. How has doors changed? What are my door options? How have doors changed? What are my door options? And why do I care about doors? What's new in doors?
So the biggest challenge with doors is alignment. So if your
Okay.
door and your frame of your equipment gets tired or old, your alignment goes off. So how do you still maintain safety, allow the door to open and the switch to work? There's tight
Mhm.
tolerances on door locks, and obviously you want to make sure that the door stays locked. And they're always coming up with creative ways to provide that solenoid locking, power as well. So keeping that door locked, how do you reduce power, not reduce power consumption? There's some new technologies there, and then the RFID technology continues to evolve in safety for non-contact type switches.
So RFID on my doors.
RFID on your doors, solenoid locking switches, low power, low power consumptions,
Hmm.
and alignment.
What is so RFID means I can't switch doors? Not that I would
Uh,
switch doors, or does it care?
it depends. You can get coded ones where they're coded per door, or you can get non-coded where they're interchangeable.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, everyone's seen how bent and busted everything ultimately gets if you over time. And I think I've seen a lot of doors on the hinge, and like, I don't know, it looks like people are hanging off the thing because of how it sags over time. So
The other
yeah.
thing is safety controllers. So a lot of the
Okay.
programmable controllers are really becoming quite advanced. The old days of wiring to safety relays and having all your wires all over into a panel is a thing of the past now. Using these safety controllers is kind of the new way of doing things because they're very cost effective and efficient. If you need to make a change or add a switch or add an e-stop or a push button, it's a program change versus rewiring your panels.
So for guests or for those who may not know, there's regular PLCs that control your machine equipment and receive inputs from your sensors, turn outputs on, run motors, open valves, that kind of piece. There's safety controllers that do similar type things, receive inputs from safety devices, and then send outputs to turn on safety contacts to provide power to equipment or motors and devices. I've done safety projects. I've programmed safety PLCs. I program Rockwell Guard Logic's PLC, which has both safety and non-safety, can run safety and non-safety programs. Are you seeing what are you seeing in you're a safety guy, so I guess you're going to be more on the safety side, but are you seeing what is the trend? Is the trend towards more guard logics where everything's integrated, it's one controller that runs safety and non-safety? Are you seeing people still use separate safety controllers? Like which one is more popular? Why one versus the other? What's your
Great,
opinion on those?
great question. Usually we see a transformation into a Guard Logix or Siemens or other type of PLC leveraging the CPU and safety CPU and controllers. If there's a migration, a
Okay.
upgrade to the equipment, so it's a legacy PLC, they want to upgrade it, then we would put in a new safety CPU. Most of the equipment that we do is older equipment, or they don't want to upgrade the PLC. So we would do a lay-on approach. So we would add a safety programmable controller to the system, and then just tie in either communications or hardwired signals.
Okay. So if you got to replace the controls on the equipment because they're a business risk, just do embed safety into it, do it all at once, all together, kind of thing.
Yeah,
If you're if it's modern enough or modern, what's there, then just bolt on new safety controller, upgrade safety system.
yeah,
No, I mean those approaches make sense. So you're not modifying the machine. You're modifying the machine as little as possible, I guess. Is that the philosophy? Like, let's add the safety, but let's not rewrite the machine or touch the
right.
machine overly unless it's required.
Yep. Yeah, cost-effective solution. It depends on the needs of the customer and technology of what they're trying to achieve. If they want to
Okay.
get more data out of it, then maybe do a controls migration and upgrade the CPU.
Is anyone using, or have you seen, and maybe it's early that it's not happening, is anyone monitoring with all this data collection? Is anyone monitoring safety systems? And then would you want to? if you're not seeing that, or just what's your opinion on what you want? Like, is it worth counting the number of e-stops, or no? Because then people get incentivized to not e-stop because it's like, oh yeah, my number. Like, it's worth knowing that, right? It's worth knowing how many safety things are
Absolutely.
happening. Are people having to emergency stop or slam the buttons or pull the cord or opening the doors? Like, yeah, you got to open the doors to do something, but the buttons are more, well, you want to know how much that's happening, I think, but you also don't want to, the last thing is you want to create a culture where someone's scared to hit a button because their numbers, like, what's your opinion on that? Are you seeing companies track that, trend that? How do they overcome the incentive to not hit the button if you're counting it?
I don't think it's a not hit the button. I think there's a little bit of that, depends on the safety culture of the company. But taking the data really helps to drive, okay, how many times is an operator going in and out of a door in a shift? And if average is 2 times a shift, and the next thing you know, it jumps up to 30 times a shift. Is there a maintenance problem? Is there a significant amount of jamming? Is there something that got bent, or some sort of preventative maintenance that needs to happen? Is there a problem with the product? Is there a problem with the material being used? These sort of things that it really tells the story of how the operator's interacting with the equipment. And if you see a jump in something, then obviously there's a problem there, and let somebody go in and take a look at it and figure out what that problem is.
I mean, ideally, you have some OEE platform or something that's collecting all of the reasons for equipment stoppage and not just safety related ones. You're collecting, well, just any old machine stop or jam or fault where it's equipment stopped on its own, but not necessarily safety stop. But it'd be curious to know if safety is targeted. Yeah, are you seeing a target? Are you seeing that safety gets monitored separate, or usually it's just part of a bigger OEE collect everything? Is anyone just looking at the safety for safety's sake?
I think it's a bigger ask. So, you know what, or a bigger look at the whole machine. So
The whole machine.
what is the reason the equipment was down from this time? What activated that? Was it a safety device? Was it something else?
What's the future? And I'm going to hold you to this, but you have to get it right. What's the future of what is the future of safety? If there's is there any like crazy stuff that's coming in to say, how is ChatGPT make me safer? Other than it writes all the documents, people can't be bothered to write the well, I guess that's another question. Let me start with one at a time though. But do you see any of this new zanier stuff? How does that come into safety? And is it starting in any way, shape, or form? Like what's the future of safety?
Absolutely. AI and ChatGPT and so on and so forth. They're great tools, but at the end of the day, you have to have somebody look at stuff and make a decision. Safety is so subjective. Really, safety should be done by decision of committee versus a single person, but it's always subjective. So some people
So
read
how is it like, because there's a lot of regulations on this. You got to
Mhm.
be X feet away from here, and this thing has to be 2 inches opening only because you don't want someone stick, or whatever centimeters. You don't want someone sticking their arm through it or finger this distance. And it's how do you think it? So to me, it seems very objective because there's so much spelled out in regulations if you can
Well,
absorb them all.
regulations are guidelines. It says, you know, you need to meet this based upon this distance, but all of that has to tie back to a hazard. And if somebody deems
Okay.
something as not a hazard or not hazardous because of XYZ, then it's very subjective whether you add these guards or add these pieces or not.
So
But
that
if,
first upfront judgment call
yeah,
is subjective. And then after that, yeah, you just roll out the regs and know them all and apply them all. And it's
correct.
section 6, subsection 2 says we got to do this kind of piece. But finding it in the first place, that initial human judgment, interesting. Okay, sorry, back to the question of
It's
what's the
even,
future?
you know, if you talk about heightened awareness, there's some areas where you can apply regulations. In certain industries like sawmills, you can't put guards around a sawmill. You can get severely hurt with that. So mining, different types of furnaces, glass manufacturers, things like that. You can't have safeguards as per regulations. You have to have an overt and heightened awareness, and that is your safeguard. PPE training and heightened awareness. So it's very subjective in terms of what is right, what's the right thing to do, and which regulations to apply.
Interesting.
And then what is AI doing with safety? It'll be interesting how it rolls in. I haven't seen a huge increase, but it'll help with some of the tool developments. But at the end of the day, someone has to take a look and make sure that's being applied properly. I know years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, there used to be wireless safety, and that's kind of fizzled out. So it'd be interesting to see if that ever comes back with some of the technologies.
Wireless safety. So like a sensor, so I could put a
Yeah.
door, and then, well, you got to power it. So, well, I guess you're powering everything, but was it all, I assume this is all powered stuff. It's
all powered, yes.
It's all powered stuff. Okay, so you got to run power, but hey, I don't have to run network over to my button or various other. Why would I guess to save money ultimately, right? I don't have to run as much network cable all over the place. I mean, they're just electrons in a different, it's still, okay. But yeah, so wireless, that's one of the technologies that gets thrown around with Industry 4.0 was a thing. You're not seeing real adoption of it, and it's sort of not maybe come through as much as some have said or sold or tried to, didn't catch on. I could see that. I mean, it's nice to save money, and I guess if you got, well, just the reliability, no? I mean, wireless is good, but
people just don't seem to trust it in terms of diagnostic coverage and reliability of it.
When you don't want to touch this stuff ever, you want to put this in and it just works perfectly forever. I mean, the safety is an interesting place because it's way more physical, right? I mean, it's physical stuff. It's people standing in front of something and something moving or spinning or doing whatever it's doing. And some of that evolves with new sensors and new controllers and pieces like that, but it's also not the data world and some of that other I mean, there's data to come out of it, but it's not that data world. So does it evolve? Does it change in the same way, shape, or form with AI? I guess unless AI is making the call, would that ever be? You submit your photos. If you can trust AI to make decisions on life or death,
yep,
which is probably coming at some point for, who knows, maybe medical. You're going to submit your cancer MRI. You submit your MRI to the machine AI, and it says, "Yep, you have cancer over here. You don't." If it's doing that kind of stuff, potentially, now those are the same kind of scans, and it's looking at the same thing all the time. Could it make a decision on safety? And I'm going to say not today, because there's so much variation in equipment. It's not every Cartner is different and been modified, and I'm talking older equipment, right? There's such a variety of older equipment, but maybe you'll have a wizard one day where you hit next 6 times and type something in. No, you're not. Ian's face right now, if I can describe Ian's face to those of you who can't see it, probably not going to happen today. Let's say that, where it makes a decision and applies that judgment, and then there's the legal ramifications of it making that call. And
that's a good question and good topic. Is the risk of some sort of legal action when it comes to safety, and if you rely on AI, who's held accountable?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with my brother over Canadian Thanksgiving, and talking about AI cars and pieces like this, and I made the point, it doesn't need to be better. It doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be better. If it's better than a person, then hey, fewer crashes, fewer people dying, fewer injuries to a less degree extent. And his point was, his counter argument was, yes, but it depends on how the legal pieces kind of fall out. But if 1,000 people get into car crashes, then 1,000 people get sued for the car crash that they did. If 1,000 people have AI cars that crash, then there's like one AI company that gets sued a
Mhm.
1,000 times. So you're pushing all that responsibility onto one place, and there's reasons that can't happen. So though maybe AI is not going to make a call on my safety anytime soon, because it's if it goes wrong, then it's sort of all that responsibility is on one person versus or one entity, let's say,
Mhm.
versus everybody.
It'd be interesting
Interesting.
to see how AI, if it gets adopted into safety, and our company's going to expose that this was developed by AI. Therefore, they have a clause to say, they're not held liable or accountable because AI developed this or provided the solutions. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a interesting questions. We just put the questions. We have a few answers on this podcast, but we're a little more questions about you need to listen to some of those other ones too to get the answers. But good conversation, Ian. Happy to have you on the show. This has been a great discussion. I've learned a few things about safety. Hope it's been useful for our guests. One question for you to ask another guest that comes on the show.
I think I'd like you to ask, what do they think Industry 5.0 will look like?
Why stop at 5? Let's go to 6. Let's go to 11, Ian. Take it to 11.
I'm going to go 30.
30. All right. You did say 30 earlier, so that was probably that. Okay, so what's next? Are we if we're in the future now, 4.0, what's next? What's the next? This is a
Yeah.
good question to ask the next guest. Perfect. We'll put that in. We'll write that down and take it forward. Again, Ian, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for bringing your deep industry safety knowledge, safety experience. Very happy to hear how you work through stuff with clients and the art of safety. Not there's a big science part to throw down, but before you get to that, it's a bit of an art to know what to do when you're standing in front of something and looking at a 50-year-old piece of equipment, to understanding the balance of getting it safe, and the right way to do that for productivity. So Ian, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Dave. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to talking again.
Perfect. Thanks, Ian. And thanks to everyone for listening. We would love to hear from you. Please follow Grantek on LinkedIn to stay up to date with what we're doing. If you have any feedback or questions or ideas for the show, please email info@grantek.com. And please join us again next time on the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.